Hey folks, today is September 24, 2018. On this edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, the cop who gunned down Botham Jean has been fired in Dallas. We'll talk to Lee Merritt, who's a family attorney, about this latest development. Also, the Laquan McDonald trial in Chicago begins today with the defense. They're beginning their, of course, their part of the trial. And, of course, they're already trying to say he was a bad guy. No shock. We'll have a live update from Chicago. Bill Cosby, as we stand right now, is still in a Pennsylvania courtroom awaiting sentencing. He could be sentenced up to 10 years. The prosecution is pushing for that. We'll have the latest on that particular case as well. Also, Judge Brett Kavanaugh now has multiple women accusing him of sexual assault, but GOP senators say they are undeterred from putting him on the Supreme Court. He also will be going live on Fox News. No surprise there. Remember that racist sheriff in New Jersey we told you about last week and that racist superintendent in Texas? Both of them don't have jobs today. We're so sad racists are losing their jobs left and right. Also, a lot of white folks are increasingly thinking there are no barriers to black folks in America. Where the hell they been? A sociologist will break it down for us. And after more than 5 years, Tiger Woods is back in the winner's circle. I'll share my thoughts about his stunning victory on Sunday. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's Uncle Roro, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
Dallas cop Amber Geiger, who shot and killed Botham Jean in his own apartment, is out of a job today. She was fired by Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall, again, for adverse conduct when she was arrested for manslaughter. It seems it wasn't the shooting that got her fired, but something she did when she was arrested. Of course, the family has been calling for this, protesters as well. It's been a couple of weeks since Botham Jean was shot and killed in that apartment. Amber Geiger has given multiple stories as exactly what took place. Initially charged with manslaughter, the family has been pushing for her to be charged with murder. The grand jury has not been convened yet, even though Faith Johnson, the DA, says she certainly will consider that potential charge. Joining us right now from Dallas is Lee Merritt, who is the family attorney. Lee, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. The family, they've laid Botham Jean to rest in St. Lucia. And so certainly this has to be bittersweet for them to hear this news today.
Well, the Chief Hall went ahead and gave us a call last night, and she wanted the family to be the first to know. And so she explained to us her termination decision, and she had to face some questions from the family. Most importantly, the obvious one is what took so long. And she had a chance to break that down for the family. I want to make something clear really quickly. The statement that she released concerning the termination was just poorly worded, but she was not fired for additional behavior that took place during her arrest. She was terminated because of her behavior or her actions on September 6th while entering Mr. Jean's home. The statement meant to say, or was attempting to explain, that she was fired on the 9th as a result of her being arrested for those actions.
So, which is still sort of weird because what were the exact actions that she took that led to her being fired? Was it entering his apartment? So is the police chief actually saying she entered the apartment?
Well, she was not very specific with what actions from September 6th. She just said, and I can't remember the particular phrase that she used, but the phrase that essentially meant something she did wrong on September the 6th. I can name a whole litany of things that went wrong on September the 6th. Namely, she murdered a man in his own home. But obviously she couldn't say that. But something about her behavior didn't comport with conduct coming of a police officer for the Dallas Police Department in Chief Hall's view, and led to her termination.
And obviously, Lee, this is going to have an impact on when this goes to trial, because if she was fired for doing something wrong, the jury will get to hear that once they go to trial. If there's a
sure.
trial.
Now, Yeah, at law, the prosecution can't introduce that evidence. It's considered a subsequent remedial measure that is inadmissible at the time of trial, both criminally and civilly under the federal rules of evidence. And so it doesn't technically come in. Everybody knows it, and they know it all around the world. And it certainly does have um, an impact on her appearance of guilt.
So, Lee, what is next? Has DA Faith Johnson given any indication when she is going to impanel a grand jury to come back with an indictment?
We know the investigation is ongoing. The Chief Hall alluded to the fact that a critical component of that investigation has been completed. I imagine that's as it relates to the investigation of Amber Guyger's statements and any follow-up that comes from that. Now, there's a tricky line that the chief had to toe, because any statement offered to her as a part of the employment decision are protected under the Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. And so she couldn't allow those statements to impact the criminal investigation. So I can only conclude that the criminal investigation, as it relates to following up on the statements that she made to criminal investigators, has been completed. Therefore, she felt comfortable making the decision to fire her based on the criminal charges of assault that took place on September 9th.
All right. And Lee, also, I was chatting with you and Ben Crump earlier. You guys are planning a big rally this weekend in Dallas. Any details on what time and where that's going to be?
So it's going to be downtown on September 29th, which is this Saturday, which is also Botham Jean's birthday. We are still hammering out the details, which we will release tonight, about time and location. We know we want to center it downtown where the community can participate and both celebrate this young man's life and demand justice from the powers that be. And so as soon as those details are available, of course, we're going to make them immediately available to you to share out. And we'll make them more available to the general public as well.
And of course, I'll actually be in Fort Worth, Dallas this weekend, speaking to the NAACP on Saturday, and we'll certainly see you at the rally on Saturday. Lee Merritt, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
All right, I want to bring in my panel right now. Michael Brown, former vice chair of the Democratic National Committee Finance Committee. Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, leadership strategist and author of How Exceptional Black Women Lead. And Eugene Craig, CEO of the Eugene Craig Organization. Folks, glad to have you on the show. Clearly, folks have been saying she should have been fired. Many felt it should have happened last week, but this police chief, and certainly Renee Hall, has made the right decision because it made no sense for Amber Guyger still to be getting paid. Still to be, frankly, having the police department represent her, if you will, because that's what happened right after the shooting took place. She was being treated as if this took place while she was on duty.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing has gone the way that it should since the day that she walked into an apartment that was not hers and shot and killed the man that lived there. She was able to go home and sleep in her own bed for 3 days. You have had the police seemingly wanting to cast disparagement on his character by releasing information about marijuana being found in her apartment. Her apartment was never searched. So finally, it's good to see that something has gone in the right direction, and I'm hoping that that means that we're going to turn the corner in this case and actually receive justice for this young man.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think, for the first time, we're actually going to see what it looks like to have a citizen versus citizen trial rather than a police versus citizen trial. The fact that the Dallas PD and the police union and folk down there were trying to protect her and went as far as to smear him and went as far as to disparage him. I mean, it's bananas. It's ridiculous. And I'm glad that she was fired. We shouldn't be giving officers paid vacations after they commit heinous crimes. And now it's up to the justice system to actually deliver justice to another citizen.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. It's interesting to see what's next. A regular Joe just walks up to a black person and shoots him. I mean, that's kind of what's next.
Yeah.
And because we've seen everything, obviously, police on citizen shooting. We've seen citizen on citizen from Trayvon Martin. And so it's wondering how does it stop? And obviously, this kind of political environment we're in now, the leader is not saying, you know what? Stop it.
Absolutely.
And without a leader doing that, I think we may continue to see these kind of things roll.
Well, and also, again, I think what you have here is, and one of the reasons you even have this level of accountability is because of Black Lives Matter, because of protesters, the kind of pressure that's being applied on these police departments and then also on these district attorneys. What we're seeing black folks who are saying to these even DAs, you don't do the right thing, we're going to throw you out of office.
Absolutely.
So we are seeing more progressive district attorneys elected across the country because for too long, prosecutors have been in bed with the police department, in bed with the police unions, and not holding cops accountable for their actions.
Yeah, I mean, prosecutors for a very long time have been in bed with unequal justice, and now what you're seeing with with citizens rising up, with Black Lives Matter, with Justice League, with a lot of these organizations, and ordinary citizens rising up. You're seeing the actual application of equal justice under the law, which means protecting their rights, but also equal application of justice when it comes to the actual criminality.
Got to ask y'all this here. Of course, last week, Senator Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke had their debate. Henry, go to my iPad. This was a tweet that Ted Cruz sent out. And so it says, in Beto O'Rourke's own words, so he retweeted the video when Beto O'Rourke was at a black church talking about what took place. And so it was quite interesting. I think we should be able to hear the audio. Guys, let me know if we can.
Information to make an informed decision. What is released to the public? That he had a small amount of marijuana in his kitchen. How can I be just in this country? How can we continue to lose the lives of unarmed black men in the United States of America at the hands of white police officers? That is not justice. That is not us. That can and that must change. Are you with me on this?
So, Michael, Ted Cruz retweets this as if that's a bad thing.
But I find interesting about that. You're right, obviously, but not on the substance. I don't care if you're black, white, Latino, or a Martian. When you stand and preach in front of a black church, people get excited. And the politician gets all into his groove or her groove, and it's so nice to see Mr. O'Rourke like that. But you know what? It absolutely is not a bad thing. And you see jurisdiction after jurisdiction is saying if you get caught with a small amount of marijuana, you should not go to jail for 10 years.
Well, look, I mean,
but elections have consequences.
Ted Cruz has 3.2 million followers, and so I tweeted, "Hey Ted, thanks for spreading Beto O'Rourke's great comments. For your 3 million followers." Because it's like, so basically, what Ted Cruz was saying? Oh, he shouldn't be saying those things.
Yeah, I mean, well, Ted was being strategic. Let's get very real here. He was playing to his racist base.
Yep.
Who do not care that a black man was killed. In fact, may even be happy that a black man was killed. So he knows who he was talking to. He was dog whistling to Dixie.
I'm a Republican and supporting Beto. Ted Cruz is hot trash. I mean, like trash or trash. I mean, like complete trash for this. I'm being honest here. I mean, for him to go after Beto on an issue of unarmed black men, I mean, there's, fiscal policy can matter, even, conservative moral policy can matter. But at the end of the day, if you come and look at me and say, hey, I don't care if you survive or live the next day, that's trash to me. You're like, you are trash.
Well, and of course, I doubt you'll be seeing Ted Cruz visit any black church. I mean, I'm just saying.
But
the thing is,
you got to put in perspective. Ted Cruz,
but they are constituents.
Is a quote unquote Christian conservative Hispanic that poses as a white guy.
Exactly.
I mean, he's
Bingo.
No, I got you. But my point is, black voters in Texas are also constituents. So, Ted, I would love to see you show up at a black church in Dallas. Take your pick. Brian Carter, Concord Baptist Church. You can go to Freddie Haynes Church, Friendship West in Dallas. Good Hope Baptist Church. You can swing on by, of course, the Church Without Walls in Houston, or you can go to any of those churches. I'm sure they will be glad to hear from you.
You just got to find one for them.
You might not get the same reaction, but I'm just saying they'd be glad to hear from you. Well, let's go to Pennsylvania. Well, the sentencing hearing for Bill Cosby is still going on as we speak. Of course, Cosby was found guilty in April of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault for drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant in 2004. Now, the 81-year-old Cosby, will, of course, faces up to 10 years in prison because what they're doing is they actually will merge several of the charges because they actually happen at the same time. And so the judge will make the ultimate decision. Already, you've had fireworks in the courtroom. Of course, Camille Cosby, who was not with Bill Cosby today when he showed up in the courtroom, she is going after this judge, even hiring an attorney to investigate him. Off the bat, the judge dismissed several of the motions that were put forth by the defense. Now, we also had testimony happening today as well, where a psychologist testified that Bill Cosby could do this again if he is allowed out. Now, the defense objected to that, saying that simply is not the case. Of course, he's also been labeled a sexually violent predator by the state as well. Now, a member of the Pennsylvania Sexual Offenders Assessment Board, Kristen Dudley, testified today that Cosby should be labeled a sexually violent predator because he has, according to her, a mental disorder that involves urges towards non-consenting women that he cannot control. Now, the deal is, remember, in this particular case here, okay, the jury's already made their decision. The judge gets to deviate from, of course, from the sentencing as well for the state guidelines. And so all of these things are happening as we speak, and they have not broken for the day. More than likely, they will finish tomorrow because there also was a delay earlier with one of the witnesses, and the judge admonished the defense on that as well. And back to our panel here, what we're seeing again is a lot of back and forth. The Cosby team has already hired an attorney who is an expert at appeals. They are going to argue that he should be allowed to stay free pending the appeal. The judge doesn't have to agree with that. And so the reality is tomorrow, when they expect to finish the sentencing, Bill Cosby could very well be led out of court in handcuffs, turned over to authorities, and taken to a state prison.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, it's sad, and for a lot of us who, I don't want to date anybody on the panel, but a lot of us who grew up watching Bill Cosby, it's a sad day. It's too bad that things like this happen, but clearly, after the jury spoke, you would hope that the judge takes into account also the great works that Bill Cosby did, but you also have to pay for their consequences when bad things happen.
Yeah. And look, I mean, the reality is when things happen, actions are taken. Folks have to also. They expect them to own up to that in sentencing, and that's one of the issues that are being talked about. Michael, you've had to deal with that.
Absolutely.
Going to federal prison, and what often happens is we've seen some cases where once somebody is at the sentencing phase, they apologize for their actions. We saw in Florida where Corinne Brown did not do that, and then then she went to prison. I doubt very seriously Bill Cosby is going to do that, but I'm also intrigued by this tactic of Camille Cosby to constantly be going after the judge. When they had the mistrial, she had the PR folks read a statement that went after this judge. And I'm sitting here going, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. That judge is still going to be overseeing the next trial. Yeah. And so she has been going after this judge repeatedly. And anybody knows in the legal system, if the person who's going to be sentencing you, you don't want to piss that person off. Now, granted, people say, well, no, you have to ignore all of that. But the reality is, we know that ain't the case.
Yeah. Lean, it could be happy.
So I'm very surprised by this tactic that Camille Cosby has been using.
Well, are they still together? Because
yes.
I remember after the
No,
last
that was
trial,
a bullshit Radar Online story.
Okay, so that was
no. First of all, anything you see in Radar Online, you can ignore. That's like the National Enquirer. The reality is, first of all, that's totally bullshit. Bill Cosby.
Maybe this is a Jedi mind trick of hers.
Bill Cosby
wants him to be sentenced.
Well, I mean, I don't know, but again, Bill Cosby, Camille Cosby, still together.
Well, I don't know. For me, I've always been the one where I've believed that these allegations. I understand the good that he's done, especially for several HBCUs, but I also know that we need to make a difference between a character that he played on TV and a man who was clearly a sexual predator. And so at this point, he is going to have to face the music. There's nothing to explain his actions, and at this point, he's going to have to pay the piper. One way or the other.
Eugene?
I mean, it looks like he's not going to be giving putting pops to anybody else, going forward. But I mean, look, the guy's 81 years old. The circumstances around this where literally the charges were filed within the last day of the last hour. I don't know if prison is probably the best, necessarily result here. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the judge actually comes down with.
Look, but this judge is going to be under lots of pressure because there are going to be people who say, no, we want to see you send him to prison.
Right.
And so he's going to be under that pressure. Remember, to your point, the district attorney who won, used this case to say, elect
ran on
me,
it.
I'm putting him in jail. And he was running against the previous DA who cut the deal with Cosby's previous attorney saying he was not going to bring those charges.
I read something interesting, and I don't know the validity of it, but I read something interesting that Camille Cosby actually retained the previous DA to investigate the current judge.
No, she retained someone who had worked in the prosecutor's office. Because so she wants an investigation into this judge. And again, I mean, I'm just very surprised in terms of how aggressive they are in terms of going after
it's not
going after the
what
judge.
I don't understand is the proclivity of people in Pennsylvania, and this also goes to Meek Mill's case, to try to get rid of the judge. I mean, there isn't a track record of Pennsylvania's judicial boards like removing judges from cases. I mean, it doesn't make sense to go after the judge.
What the judge wants to hear is you take responsibility.
Yeah.
That's what the judge wants to hear. You have a better chance of getting lesser time than when you're doing the kind of tactics they're doing now.
Absolutely.
You think he'll take responsibility?
Yeah, take responsibility.
No, do you think Cosby will?
No, absolutely not.
Hell no.
Absolutely
Not for them pudding pops.
No.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. All right, folks, let's go to Chicago, where Jason Van Dyke is the former Chicago cop on trial for murdering Laquan McDonald. Van Dyke's lawyers started presenting their case today. They're using experts to argue that McDonald took the fatal shot while standing, not on the ground, even though he had a pulse and was breathing when the paramedics arrived. Joining us right now is Kathy Chaney. She's the assistant audience engagement editor at the Chicago Sun-Times. Kathy, welcome back to the show. And so, obviously, the defense wants to go after Laquan McDonald as best as they can. Your thoughts about what happened today?
Like you said, they want to go after him, talk about his troubled past and how he was violent-natured. He had many run-ins with the law, and it just wasn't, it wasn't believable. Even though the things happen, it's like it's irrelevant to this case. And the defense expert witness talked about how of the 16 shots, the one that was fatal was in the chest, and Laquan was facing Jason Van Dyke, setting it up for a, self-defense thing. But that expert also said that most of the shots, only one came when Laquan was on the ground. Now, the dash cam video that just about everyone saw, after the first shot, Laquan hit the ground. And then you have all the, the volley of the rest of the shots. So I don't know what they were thinking, trying to convince people that most of the 16 shots came when Laquan was up, when he immediately fell down within 2 seconds after the first shot.
Well, and not only that, there's a thing called video.
Exactly.
I mean, the video they try to keep from folks being able to see, there's a thing called a video to actually see what took place.
Exactly. So I don't know what they were trying to do, set up or whatever, and then talk about his violent past. It's not going to work. The video is just plain and simple right there. So I think they have to chalk this up to a loss for them today, coming straight out the gate. But we are expecting to hear a few arguments tomorrow about their video, about their PowerPoint presentation of, that expert versus the prosecution's expert last week saying, no, just about all of those shots came when Laquan was down. I mean, the threat had been removed at that time. So I don't know how they can come around with that nonsense, but I think we're expected to hear a little bit more about that tomorrow.
And obviously, again, the defense, they got their part. Are you still seeing a large number of Chicago police officers showing up, standing behind Van Dyke?
Oh, absolutely. I know that there were some protests. There are protests every day that are outside in front of the criminal courts building. And they're peaceful, they're doing the chanting and everything. But today, the police formed a line in front of the steps to make sure that the protesters didn't come forward or try to bother anyone. And they're not trying to bother anyone ever. They're just doing the regular protests and demonstrations that we always see. But that police line, they tried to send a statement today for that. And it didn't go over well. I mean, no one pretty much paid attention to it, but it's just that they tried to show, force and that they were a united front more than ever since the defense is, started their thing today. And I will say that last week started on Thursday. Every Thursday until the trial is over, the protesters will protest at 3 o'clock Chicago time for 16 minutes to symbolize the 16 shot.
All right, Kathy Chaney, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, then, folks, we're going to go to a break right now. When we come back, I got to talk about a couple of racist white folks, okay, who had all kind of crazy things to say about black people, and now they don't have jobs today.
Lord.
Racism just don't pay. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment.
Racist unemployment.
All right, folks, welcome back. Brett Kavanaugh has drama. Of course, 2 more women have come forward to say that he sexually harassed them, assaulted them. The New Yorker dropped a bombshell report last night with details of one woman who said when he was in college, of course, he shoved his penis in her face. She pushed him away. He is blasting what she had to say, saying it is an absolute lie. He's going to be actually talking to Martha McCallum on Fox News, him and his wife tonight for an exclusive interview. And Republicans have made it clear they are moving forward. This is a quote here from Mitch McConnell. Here we go to my iPad. This is from Politico. Quote, I want to make it perfectly clear. McConnell declared on Monday, Judge Kavanaugh will be voted on here on the Senate floor, up or down on the Senate floor. This fine nominee to the Supreme Court will receive a vote in this Senate in the near future. So, go to our panel here. Look, I mean, obviously, they are accusing Democrats of trying to stall this. Dr. Ford is going to be testifying on Thursday. You have this allegation being made here. There are Democrats who are saying that this cannot move forward. The question then becomes, will Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, will Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, will you see Senator Susan Collins, Senator Lisa Murkowski say, no, there needs to be an investigation here. Eugene, you're Republican. What do you think happens?
Brett Kavanaugh definitely earned his nasty award. I mean, he definitely earned this nasty award. Like he earned, like he's getting up there. He may be up there in the Nasty Award Hall of Fame. I don't understand what it is the white dudes in their whip out game. I just don't understand it. I'm being honest about it. I mean, it was the Harvey Weinstein thing. You know, I don't
Harvey, Charlie Rose, Louis C.K.
This was the whip out game. I'm sorry. Like Kavanaugh definitely earned this nasty award. But being on a very serious tip, on a very serious note.
No, you didn't say that.
On a very serious note.
He did.
The thing is this.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. The thing is this.
None.
The thing is this. There are other witnesses that corroborate Ford's story. Her therapist and the polygraph.
Right.
In this second instance, there are witnesses that are corroborating this story. The hearing for Thursday, there should be more than just Kavanaugh and Ford speaking. I actually think that Mitch McConnell is wrong, and he does not have the votes, or may be pleasantly surprised when he takes this vote that the vote probably will fail. I don't think,
You think so?
I think so. And I'll say this, I don't think Susan Collins is going to be the one that flipped. I mean, I also think activists are going about it the wrong way in dealing with Susan Collins. She's not the type that caves to quote unquote, massive outside pressure. She's,
But here's the deal, though. But the reality is, pressure matters. And so
I agree
because here's the deal. What happened was she made a comment that she wasn't getting phone calls.
Yep.
And folks were like,
okay.
okay, all right, boo, we can handle that. And so you begin to have that as well.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is again, everybody's focusing on the 2 pro-choice Republican senators. Mm-hmm. This, to me, is one of those cases where you have 2 retiring senators who have talked a whole lot of trash, who, if they had the guts to do what McCain did when it came to the health care bill, say, you know what, all y'all can go to hell. and vote no. And this is where, here's my issue with Jeff Flake, okay? And I remember when I was on ABC This Week, and everyone was talking about, Jeff Flake and his great speech he gave. And I said, I don't give a damn about no speech he gave, because that's what he does. Jeff Flake is flaky.
Yes, exactly.
He gives these speeches, and he'll comment on Twitter, and he'll talk about, it's a shame, and then he will go right along and vote along with Trump. He's on the Judiciary Committee. He's on the Senate Judiciary Committee. He has a vote. Ben Sass of Nebraska, same thing. Talk a good game, go right along. And so the question is, will they have the guts to say, I'm not going to sit here and support this?
I don't know, because I think it's interesting, the point you made. If McConnell can say to the White House, look, I did everything I could, put the vote up, and it went down. See, then he can say to the president, I did everything I said I would do. I'm sorry it didn't work. Now you got to send your next nominee, and I got to tell you, it's going to happen after the midterm.
But he also told Trump not to nominate Kavanaugh.
He did.
He's like, this is going to be a little tough one.
The other thing is this: I think strategy-wise, if I'm on the other side of the aisle, right, and I say, okay, I need to kill this vote, I don't think I go after. I'd say don't go after Collins or Murkowski. If this is becoming
go after who?
If this is becoming a moral issue, I go after my moral senators. I go after Langford. I go after Scott. I go after people. I go after the folk that have.
Go after who?
I say I go after Langford. I go after Scott. I go after the folk. I go after Ruby. I go after the folk that have made their.
They ain't gave a damn about no morals.
Thank you.
I go after the people that have made the moral hill the one.
No, they haven't.
Y'all ain't got a moral hill. That's your problem.
And
go ahead.
You don't have a moral hill. That is your problem. Here's the issue. They don't give a damn about women. Okay. They have made a deal with the devil, who happens to be residing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and they want to get someone on the court who is an activist, who will strike down Roe, and Trump wants to get someone on the court that's going to protect him if the Mueller investigation actually implicates him.
Lindsey Graham.
So that is why they are trying their hardest to push this man through.
Lindsey Graham, quote, in my view, the process needs to move forward with a hearing Thursday and a vote in committee soon thereafter. They don't care. This is pure power.
Yeah. But it's power that the president, I hate to even call him the president, 45.
Or Agent Orange.
Anything but the president is, he has punked these folks. He's just flat out punked them. And I don't even.
Which I don't understand. I mean, what possibly can he do to you as a senator?
Easy. Because they also want power.
Yeah.
They are afraid of him tweeting against them. They are afraid of him doing what he did to McCain, trashing him in rallies. They are scared to death.
Yeah.
They are unwilling to stand before him and say, go to hell, because the reality is the right-wing Republican base, they are perfectly aligned with Donald Trump.
I agree.
And they don't. Like, for instance, Jeff Flake, as opposed to it, here's my deal, okay? I'm not going to run from a fight. As opposed to announce, well, look at the poll, I'm not going to run. I'm going to say, no, damn you, I'm running.
Yeah.
Now, if y'all defeat me, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stand before you and kick your behind every single day and say, how dare you question my Republican credentials? But no, he ran from a fight. He was scared of losing. And that's the problem.
And
they are scared of losing.
That was the beauty of McCain. If that was the beauty of McCain. In 2016, they said, okay, McCain, you are a rhino. You were, you're X, Y, and Z. And they ran Kelly Ward against him. And McCain said, well, you want to fight? I'll give you a fight. And he torched him.
No, but remember, McCain aligned with a bunch of the Tea Party folks. I mean, he went further to the right because he also was afraid of losing. My point is this here. If you have conviction, if you have principles, if you have integrity, you look them in the eye and say, you're not going to somehow change my views.
That's why I don't understand. These folks were in office before Trump was elected. So they have their own bases. What are they afraid of? That's what I don't get.
He controls the party.
They're afraid of getting primaried. He has. What happened was they made a deal with the devil.
Right.
Under the previous administration, they sort of fanned the flames of the Tea Party movement. They played into racism. They moved this birther theory all over the place. They were overtly racist to the Obama family, and then they grew this flame that they were unable to keep under control. And they created the perfect scenario for the racist in chief to come up and snatch their party out from under them, and now they don't have anything to do to be able to take it back.
All right, folks. Last week we talked about a couple of cases out of New Jersey and Texas. First off, let's go to the New Jersey case. That was a sheriff there who was in that particular area and largest county in New Jersey. And let's just say he had a few things. Bergen County Sheriff Michael Sardino had a few things to say about black people. And this is what was caught on tape.
He talked about the whole thing, the marijuana, sanctuary state, better criminal justice reform. In other words, let the blacks come in and do whatever the they want, smoke the marijuana, do this, do that, and don't worry about it. You know, we'll tie the hands of cops.
Guess what? On Friday, the sheriff, he quit, and his 4 deputies, they all quit. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said he will appoint an interim sheriff who could rebuild the public trust. Now let's go to Texas, where Lynn Rett, the Onalaska Independent School District superintendent, who decided to jump on Facebook after the Houston Texans lost a couple of weeks ago and put in on the Houston Chronicles Facebook page, "You can't trust a black quarterback." He was upset how Deshaun Watson threw a game-ending interception. He said, "I thought it was private, but it was public." Well, the Onalaska School Board met on Saturday, and he no longer has a job. Now, he apologized, but I don't really give a damn about his apology. So we have both of these 2 races now out of a job. Also, by the way, the white guy who stopped the Florida A&M students from trying to get on the elevator, he turned himself in as well. Here's the thing that I'm just loving. All these racist white folks got to realize that everybody got these now. And if you act a fool, like for instance, there were 2 white guys who threw, I think, a Latino brother off the bus in San Francisco because they like him playing his music. Oh, we gonna know their names real soon.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, are y'all losing y'all mind? And and then I really believe that they're watching too many Trump rallies and somehow getting hyped up saying, "Oh no, we're gonna take it into our own hands." Okay, knock yourself out.
Listen, Black Twitter is the greatest investigative force ever to be assembled. It's the truth. You know, we'll have the 2 white dudes in San Francisco named probably by this time tomorrow. But the crazy thing about the school superintendent, like, you literally commented on a newspaper's article and thought it was private. Like, that's how bold you got in your racism. You
That
said,
is how dumb you are.
You said,
That's
you
the
said,
worst excuse
I'm going
ever.
to put on, a newspaper.
and then tried
region, yes.
and then tried to come back to say, "Well, no, I got a stats to back it up."
The stat,
Oh,
okay.
Worse. He made it worse.
Oh my
Really?
God.
Okay.
Really? So now he out of a job.
Yeah.
And what was a trip, though, was the mayor of the town supported him. He made a mistake. He had some other parents. Same thing. 88% white school district.
Of course.
And I'm just getting. The reason I'm laughing because every single time, like the guy in Ohio who had the business and he was yelling the N-word to a brother, and now he's like, I'm not a racist, and now I lost my whole business. I'm sorry.
I broke racist, my favorite racist.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you lost your business because you're a racist. I ain't got no compassion for these bigots. None.
But the sheriff is a scary one, though. I'm going to tell you why. The sheriff is a scary one because that's the actual real beliefs held by a lot of sheriffs and a lot of sheriff departments.
The reason it's scary is because we just saw the sheriff down in Florida who pled guilty when they were tacking on cases on black people who were innocent.
Yep.
They literally, it was literally policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, once again, we know that over a decade ago, the FBI came out and said that white supremacists are infiltrating police departments all across this country. We also know that absolutely nothing has happened as a result of that. frankly, if you don't like black people, if you want to kill black people and not have any price to pay for it, that's the best job to have in America.
True.
So I'm not surprised.
True. Let's go to Florida, folks, where Andrew Gillum is leading Ron DeSantis in that particular race to become the next governor of Florida. He's up by 3.5 points in the Real Clear Politics poll. A poll, that's a combination of multiple polls in that particular race. That's within the margin of error. So the reality is, look, still a lot of work to go. Less than 50 days. Andrew Gillum, though, he also dropped this new ad today.
What sits beneath our names is a healthcare system that works for everybody. Our teachers who need to get paid what they're worth. Our kids who need an opportunity that should not be defined by their zip code, where they live, or what side of the track they grow up on. The politics of hope and aspiration and inspiration and opportunity still lives, and it lives right here in the state of Florida. Let's bring it home.
They're interesting here because what we're seeing Ron DeSantis. First of all, he left his job as member of Congress because he said, "Ooh, this thing is serious." That we also in that particular poll as well, we're seeing it's tied now between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson there as well. Nelson is attaching himself. First of all, he finally came out of his damn coma and realized that I better campaign.
I'm in a race.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think what's interesting here is that DeSantis has been getting nailed for the last couple of weeks for his ties to various races, to various anti-Semites as well. And he is strapping Trump on his back. And so I think what's going to happen is we're going to see some very interesting things happen. Trump likely is going to go down to Florida and have a rally. And so imagine what's going to happen if you have, in the last 30 days of this race, if you have Donald Trump, Michelle Obama, and Barack Obama traveling, all three going to Florida, holding rallies for this gubernatorial race.
And you'll see, and there'll be different parts of Florida. I know everyone thinks Florida is south is Miami Beach. But you got the Panhandle, you have Central Florida, the I-4 corridor, and then obviously South Florida. And I don't know if you'll see Mrs. Obama or the former president in the Panhandle. That's where I think you'll see the president, 45, hosting his rally. But I think what concerns me about that poll, and anytime you have state candidates running, especially candidates of color, running, poll numbers are a little weird because it's kind of cool to say you're for the black candidate. You don't want to tell a pollster that you're really not for him. So I'm really interested to see how the polls, and obviously, hopefully, he wins his election.
Well, look, Gillum is running as if he's down. Remember, he was down 7 points a week before the primary, and then and beat all the other candidates as well. But I think what you also have here is, again, I do think you're going to have a Trump backlash. I'm very interested to see if white women are finally woke, white woke women. That's talk about the WWW. If that happens, because what happens, I think, with Kavanaugh could have an impact as well in terms of what happens in the midterms as well.
Absolutely. And I also wonder what the implications will be for the Latino population, because you have 45 who just insulted Puerto Ricans, and I would think by extension, anyone of compassion in terms of how he sort of denied the reality that there were 3,000 people who lost their lives as a result of Hurricane Maria.
And a lot of Puerto Ricans left Puerto Rico and now live in Florida.
Exactly. And even DeSantis came out and said, I think that number's right.
And Rick Scott.
Exactly.
And then Trump blasted DeSantis and Scott for not agreeing with him. They're like, your ass ain't down here dealing with these Puerto Ricans.
Hold on, taking this a little too far there.
Exactly. So one thing that I'm thinking is, Trump is the type that holds a grudge. He's petty. Okay, he is petty.
Yeah, we know that.
Is he going to be there, campaigning for him?
No. He will be in Florida.
Oh, absolutely.
Because again, here's what you have. He has to go to Florida because of Rick Scott.
Yeah.
And even though Scott's trying to dance around it, they know desperately that if they want to keep confirming these right-wing judges, they have to stay in control of the United States Senate.
That's true.
So absolutely, I think he's going to be going to Florida. So we'll be seeing that. But let's now go to Alaska, folks. Y'all want to really see white privilege? Not like we know it exists. Okay, but check this out. Justin Schneider, pled guilty in Alaska to felony assault of an Alaskan Native woman who claimed he strangled and sexually assaulted her. He had been charged with 4 felony charges for the incident, including kidnapping and assault. Y'all, Justin Snyder ain't going to prison. A deal was worked out. A deal was worked out between his attorneys and the DA. Y'all, he got probation.
White privilege on steroids.
All right, you ain't gonna show me a black dude
Oh, heck.
strangled. But you're sitting there going to any judge, what the hell were you thinking? Strangled and sexually assault?
It's
Probation?
Let me tell you something. I got a rule for Zimmerman. I have a ceasefire rule for Zimmerman. I think there should be no straight bullets until Zimmerman catches. I think that rule needs to apply to this dude too. I mean, there should be no hands thrown until this guy catches his. I mean, that's absolutely atrocious. I think this judge should be disbarred. I think the prosecution agrees that deal should be disbarred. I mean, it's just sad. I mean, in the Me Too era, in the era where we're having an awakening of protecting women, and here you actually have somebody that to a degree admitted. Part of the plea deal typically is admitting that you did the crime, right?
Absolutely.
That, hey, I strangled her and I sexually assaulted her, but, hey, let's go ahead and give me a slap on the wrist and walk free. Nah, F that. Natives need to run up on them.
Absolutely.
What kind of deterrent is that? I mean, that judge.
When the system fails,
there is none.
This is a failure of the criminal justice system out there.
Absolutely.
It's a failure of the system. And what happens when the system failure, new system emerges.
Chicago. I got to bring this story up today. A Cook County judge threw out 18 convictions of men who had drugs planted on them by a rogue band of Chicago police officers. Wow. That means 42 people thus far have been exonerated in cases tied to former Sergeant Ronald Watts, his decade of fabricated charges. Now, Ronald Watts, black cop, straight up thug, okay? That's exactly what he is. And they say he ran a unit that was filled with folks who were shaking down drug dealers. They were stealing money from them as well. The department knew it for years. And some of the people who were in this unit are still on the Chicago police force. And you know what? We've heard nothing from Candace Owens. We've heard nothing from Sheriff David Clark. We've heard nothing from Candace's boss, Charlie Kirk. And isn't it interesting? All these Blue Lives Matter people are very quiet about thug cops like this, but they always say, it's a few bad apples, but the apples are still on the police force. And that, to me, this story is a perfect example where I keep trying to explain to people who don't understand Chicago. You cannot trust a police department when you have multiple thugs with badges and guns.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nobody's going to sit here and trust the police officers.
Absolutely not.
Especially this thug.
Doesn't it sound like training day?
Man, listen, I got to put cases on all y'all.
Sounds like training day too.
No. Chicago makes the Rampart Division of the LAPD look like Sesame Street.
Listen, it makes Baltimore's MMA division, look like Sesame Street.
Wow.
The thing is this, with situations like this, you got to get these cops convicted. And I think you could, hate to say it, put them in GP. Put them in general population. Just the heavy hand of justice has to come down on cops like this. But the second part, after the conviction, when the civil case comes about, you got to hit them in a pension. The police unions got to start paying for this.
The only way you change this is, first of all, you make them pay for their own defense.
Exactly.
Yes.
And yes, you take pensions.
That's
the only way. That's the only way.
Only
Earlier, of course, we talked about the New Jersey sheriff as well as the school superintendent. And look, we know how folks feel, but a new report says racial resentment in the country spiked when Barack Obama was elected president. Oh my God! Do I see a black cat? Do I see shocking? Shocking, really? Okay, so you look at this chart here. I don't even know what the hell it's showing, but you actually see the spike as well. Yeah, I got it, but the chart still don't make any sense. African Americans should not have special favors. Okay. According to the stats, it was going down until 2008. Then African Americans have gotten more than they deserve. It was on its way up, but the trend accelerated in 2008. Okay, no shock. Conditions don't make it difficult for African Americans to get ahead. That attitude jumped after 2008. Really? Okay, no shock. The man who visualized these attitudes is sociologist Dr. Ryan LeCount of Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. Welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered, Doc. So, look, I made a point in 2009 when I said, get ready. We're about to enter this period of white minority resentment, where white folks in America somehow believe that black people are getting all kind of stuff. We saw polling data early on in President Obama's first term. I think it was in 2009, where 25% of Tea Partiers said he was doing more for black people than white people, which probably for black people were going, really? We are not seeing it. And so, but this is not, but not only this, Thomas Edsall, the New York Times, had a piece after the election of Trump in 2016, where he went back and saw polling data after the 1984 election of Reagan over Mondale, where white voters were saying the same thing. Guess where? In places like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. This view that somehow blacks are getting more. Let's just be honest that since the civil rights movement, you have white Americans who somehow believe that black people have gotten way too much because, frankly, they wanted black people to stay in their place.
There's no doubt that that's a huge part of what we're seeing here. And this study is part of a broader regimen of work focused on the racialization of politics more generally. And the point of this study is not, there's been a lot of attention to the focus on the year 1986. That's actually just the first year for which there are data available in this data set that was analyzed. But the point here is that when people come to identify as liberal or conservative white folks, their racial resentments are playing an increasing role in the formation of that identification. And what it means for white people to say, hey, I'm a liberal, or hey, I'm a conservative, is increasingly what they're thinking about this outgroup that seems to play such a big role in who they say that they are, which is really interesting.
And this is why I kept saying in the election to the people on Morning Joe and the folks on New Day and Fox and Friends, cut this BS out about, working class anxiety, because they were not talking about black people. They were talking about white folks, as if somehow we are not working class. And they refused to deal with that. I remember one morning, Joe Scarborough made this comment that, well, since 1973, the wages of black men had gone up 12% and that of white working class men 3%. And I'm like, what the hell were the wages of white men before 1973? Right. It was so low for black people, of course it went up.
This story that continues to get so much traction in the media that identifies the working class as white without naming that is a huge part of the problem. When people talk about the story of our present politics being about working class resentment, about downward mobility, what they're not saying, what's going unsaid, is that they're describing the working class as being white. And the point can't be made enough that the majority of working class people in the United States are people of color. And their lack of animation by these dynamics and attraction to Trump has to be otherwise explained. I should say quickly, in the study, I control for a number of economic variables. And I find that even after you try to assess people's economic station or their downward mobility, you still see that the real thing that's animating their association with their political ideology is racial resentment, is attitudes about black folks.
See, so in 2009, a study was done, I believe it was Pew, and the question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America for your children? Every racial group was optimistic except white people. 2016, in September, the question was asked, are you optimistic about the economic future of America for the next 10 years? Black people, lowest wages, lowest wealth, highest optimism. Latinos, second lowest wealth, second highest optimism. Then Asian Americans. White Americans, highest wealth by far of anybody else. 41% said they were optimistic. And I keep telling people what is going on, this white fear, is that what has happened is they have had decades and decades and decades and decades where their children have not had to compete. And now all of a sudden, they're living in towns, that whole middle America. Every time we see an election, and a huge swath of red, they're living in places where automation has killed their jobs, where the towns are drying up, military bases have shut down, and their deal is we got to blame somebody. We don't want to move, we want to stay here, and in their minds, things are going to return, and the problem is they're turning the television on, and they're saying, oh, look at that damn Colin Kaepernick making all that money. How dare he kneel? Then they're watching LeBron James. Then they're sitting criticizing Oprah for endorsing Obama. So what's happening is, I believe, these white folks are in these areas, and they're 88, 90, and 95% white. They don't even see people of color, and it's just festering. And listen to talk conservative radio all day. They watch Fox News all day, and all they're getting is those people, those people. That's why you don't have jobs. That's why you're losing everything, and that's what's driving this. Your thoughts?
Boy, I mean, there's so much to say. I think you probably heard the idea that when you're used to privilege, equity feels like oppression. Mm-hmm. And I think that the experience of confronting the fact that society was characterized by white supremacy for most of the history of this country, and that institutions, while slowly and imperfectly, are to some extent starting to be more democratic and inclusive, for people who, especially perhaps for people who don't have those experiences with people of color, those things are experienced as threats and not as a move toward equity. And that's beginning to show up pretty clearly in our survey data. I should just add one more thing really quickly. In a lot of discussion of the study that's been out there, a lot of folks have fixated on the year 1986, which is the first year for which those data were available in this analysis. Certainly, all of us scholars of racial politics have been clear that our politics have been racialized more or less since the beginning. It's just that was the first year for which data were available in this analysis.
Last question for you.
Sure.
Do you believe that part of this problem is that national media is unwilling to drill down deep into these areas, and so therefore they're unwilling to have these level of conversations to challenge white assumptions? And I personally believe that's the case because, frankly, these newsrooms look the exact same way as many of these towns. And so when media is deathly afraid of confronting their own bigotry, their own issues when it comes to race, it's hard for them to have real honest conversations about what's happening in America because they don't want to have that mirror turned on themselves.
I think that's absolutely the case. I would refer to fellow sociologist Robin DiAngelo's brand new book called White Fragility. And when the general idea of the text is that white people lack the experience in interracial settings, and they lack the experiences of reflecting on their own privileged position, and those experiences or lack thereof engender a real difficulty coming to those conversations. And then there's a structural problem that you allude to. With our newsrooms come to look like most of the other social institutions in our society where white men are way overrepresented. And the evidence is very clear that when you have those circumstances, you get echo chambers where you don't have people who are sitting in the room to say, maybe we need to have some attention to this thing that's an issue of major concern for a huge proportion of the society, because those people aren't aware of it. So democratization of our media system is an important thing as well.
All right. Well, Doc, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And I'm going to be sure to email some of those folks at other newsrooms to say, y'all want to have a real conversation and stop talking about Trump and Kavanaugh all damn day? Why don't you have this discussion? Let's see what they have to say.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right, folks. Over the weekend, Tiger Woods won his 80th career golf tournament by winning the Tour Championship in Atlanta by 2 strokes over world number 1 Justin Rose. It was the first time, again, he had won in 5.5 years. He was quite emotional in doing so. Huge number of issues. Of course, we know about the affairs, the accident. We know about getting divorced. We know about him losing endorsements. Then he's had 4 back surgeries. Huge issues when it comes to his health. And at one point, he could barely, first of all, not barely, he could not even bend over. And so for him to be on this road in the last 16 months has been miraculous. Now, it's very interesting. So when I had posted something on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, you had people who were sitting there going, bro, I don't give a damn about Tiger Woods because he played golf with Trump. Then you had those people who were sitting up saying, oh, Tiger Woods is not a conscious black man. First of all, let's just be real honest here. It's a whole bunch of athletes who ain't conscious. And they don't stop y'all from watching basketball. And they don't stop y'all from watching football. And don't stop you watching a few black folks who are still playing in Major League Baseball. Why do I say that? Because the fact of the matter is this here. Sometimes we watch sports just to actually watch sports. I would love for Tiger Woods to actually be conscious. When I interviewed his father, Earl Woods, he said he wanted Tiger to be very much involved in political and social issues in this country. He has not done so. That is of his choosing. But the reality is this. I don't care who you are and how you feel. When somebody was at the point when they are the greatest golfer of this generation, arguably the greatest golfer ever, and they could barely even bend over, to come back from that, to come back from a surgery nobody else has ever come back from, is truly miraculous. And I'll give us props for it. Now, it's also interesting, of course, because a whole bunch of folks were wearing Air Jordans all those years when he didn't endorse any candidates and wasn't speaking out on any issues. And made a point at one time where he said Republicans buy shoes too. And so if you don't like Tiger Woods, that's fine. If you don't want to follow Tiger Woods, that's fine. But let me be clear. I will, because I love golf. I love what he has done. I love to see somebody who's a competitor operate at a very high level over a long period of time. And to see him win his 80th golf tournament. He's now 2 off the all-time record, Sam Snead, of 82. People are already saying he's likely going to win a major next year. He has 14. And he still, of course, could pass Jack Nicklaus, who has 18. The reality is he is one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen. And so I'm going to be willing to applaud that anytime, any day. Now, again, if Tiger decides that he wants to become socially conscious in these issues, that'll be great. Also, I don't give a damn who Tiger Woods dating. I don't give a damn who Tiger Woods married before, because you know what? I really don't watch Tiger Woods to see him change a diaper or see who he's married to. I actually watch Tiger Woods to see somebody who plays golf at a very high level. And so that's the standard. The standard I look at. And so I say, congrats, Tiger, because I don't care who you are, to come back from that, where your career, where everything you thought was over, and to come back and win is still an amazing thing that he accomplished.
Hear, hear.
Says another golfer. So again, folks, don't forget, support RolandMartinUnfiltered.com by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to join our fan club. We've had one heck of a week, actually the last 3 weeks since we launched. Nearly 5 million views on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. Don't forget, you can always see this show. As soon as we click in, you can go back and watch the full show on those 3 platforms. You can watch on YouTube, though, because they actually pay us more than everybody else. And so you can go there as well. And, of course, you can support us that way. We've got some great stuff lined up for you this week. Tomorrow, we'll be broadcasting live from the Spirit Democracy Awards of the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. They have their annual awards. I'm going to be actually emceeing that dinner, so we'll be broadcasting live from there tomorrow. Also, later this week, you'll be hearing from Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish, of course, starring in the movie directed by Malcolm Lee called Night School. We'll be hearing from them as well. So some great things lined up for this week. And let me make it clear. You saw us talking about Botham Jean, talking about Laquan McDonald, talking about Bill Cosby. I'm sure the cable news networks are spending all of their time going over the same stuff with Brett Kavanaugh and something Donald Trump said at the United Nations today that we don't really care about. The point is this here. We are here for black people. We're here to talk about our issues. We're here to talk about the things that we care about and that matter. And guess what? There's no other platform like ours. Okay, there's some people out there who are talking once or twice a week or whatever, but nobody is discussing the issues that we're talking about every single day and providing the kind of analysis that we do. So that's one of the reasons why we would love for you to continue supporting us. So again, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to support us. PayPal, you also have Square. Either one of those platforms, that'd be great. Folks, I shall see you tomorrow. Don't forget, we keep it real, keep it black, and unapologetically. Holla!